For decades, the relationship between the United States and Venezuela has been a story of oil, power, ideology, and global influence. A relationship that once seemed stable, slowly transformed into one of the most intense geopolitical rivalries in the Western Hemisphere. Today, we explore how the two nations went from partners to adversaries. This is the story of USA versus Venezuela, a conflict shaped by ambition, politics, and the struggle for control. Chapter 1: The Origin of a Powerful Alliance. Long before tensions filled the headlines, the United States and Venezuela had one of the strongest partnerships in Latin America. In the early 20th century, Venezuela discovered vast oil reserves beneath its soil, some of the largest on Earth. For the U.S., a growing industrial superpower, this was a strategic gift. American companies entered Venezuela, building refineries, pipelines, ports, and infrastructure. By the 1920s, Venezuela had become one of the world's top oil exporters, and the U.S. was its biggest buyer. For decades, this partnership seemed unbreakable. Venezuela grew wealthier. The United States secured a constant flow of oil. But beneath the surface, political instability was rising. Chapter 2: The Rise of Populism. Venezuela's wealth was not evenly distributed. Even as the country produced billions of dollars in oil, many Venezuelans lived in poverty. This inequality fueled political movements demanding change. Over time, a charismatic leader emerged, Hugo Chávez. Chávez promised to give power back to the people, reduce poverty, and break Venezuela's dependence on the United States. When he was elected president in 1998, it marked the beginning of a new era. Chávez was not just a politician. He was a symbol of resistance against foreign influence, especially American influence. His speeches were fiery, emotional, and anti-imperialist. And Washington noticed. Chapter 3: Chávez versus the United States. The confrontation escalated quickly. Chávez nationalized oil resources, ending decades of American economic dominance. The U.S. government criticized his policies, claiming he was threatening democracy and destabilizing the region. In 2002, a controversial coup briefly removed Chávez from power. Chávez accused the United States of supporting it. Washington denied involvement, but the damage was done. Trust was gone. From that moment on, the rivalry evolved into a war of narratives. The U.S. portrayed Chávez as an authoritarian. Chávez portrayed the U.S. as an imperialist enemy. His speeches became global headlines, calling U.S. presidents devils and enemies of Latin America. And yet, the oil kept flowing, because even political enemies depend on energy. Chapter 4: The Decline of the Economy. Despite Chávez's promises, Venezuela's economy began to weaken. The nation relied almost entirely on oil for survival. When oil prices dropped, Venezuela suffered. As the economy declined, the government increased control over industries, creating shortages and inflation. Critics blamed corruption and mismanagement. Supporters blamed foreign interference. Then, in 2013, Chávez died. His successor, Nicolás Maduro, inherited both the presidency and a nation in crisis. Under Maduro, inflation turned into hyperinflation. Millions of Venezuelans left the country searching for food, medicine, and stability. The United States saw this as the collapse of a dictatorship. Maduro saw it as economic warfare fueled by Washington. Chapter 5: The War of Sanctions. As Venezuela's crisis deepened, the U.S. increased pressure. Sanctions were placed on government officials, state-owned companies, and eventually the Venezuelan oil industry itself. For the U.S., sanctions were a tool to force change. For Venezuela, they were an act of aggression. In 2019, the conflict escalated even further. Washington recognized Juan Guaido as Venezuela's interim president, declaring Maduro's government illegitimate. More than 50 countries followed the U.S. lead. Maduro responded by strengthening alliances with Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, and others, nations often seen as U.S. rivals. The rivalry was no longer just Venezuela versus USA. It had become a global chess match, with both sides supported by powerful allies. Chapter 6: The Human Impact. While governments fought, ordinary people suffered the most. Venezuelans faced shortages of basic foods, medicine scarcity, blackouts, rising violence, loss of savings due to hyperinflation, mass migration. Some blamed the government for corruption. Others blamed the United States for sanctions. Many blamed both. The geopolitical rivalry had become a humanitarian crisis. Chapter 7: The Oil Factor. Oil always remained at the center of the story. Despite political hostility, the U.S. continued to rely on oil imports, and Venezuela needed to sell its oil to survive. In 2022 and 2023, global energy instability led the U.S. to reopen limited diplomatic and economic channels with Venezuela. Why? Because geopolitics changes, but energy needs do not. The U.S. needed oil. Venezuela needed buyers. Both nations realized that rivalry does not erase reality. Their economies and the global market remain connected. Chapter 8: Where the story stands today. Today, USA versus Venezuela is more complex than ever. The U.S. still pushes for political reforms. Venezuela strengthens ties with Russia, China, and Iran. Millions of Venezuelans continue to seek better lives abroad. Sanctions remain a powerful tool of pressure. Oil remains the fragile bridge that keeps the two nations connected. The rivalry is not just about ideology, not just about oil, not just about leadership. It is about power and the struggle for influence in one of the most strategic regions of the world. Conclusion: the story of USA versus Venezuela is not over. It continues to evolve, shaped by politics, economics, and the lives of millions of people. A rivalry born from oil, transformed by ideology, and defined by a world where every nation fights to protect its interests. This is not just a conflict between two countries. It is a reflection of the world we live in today.